I discovered that my daughter-in-law was embezzling all the money I sent to my son. In court, she slapped me, pushed me, and screamed, "You greedy old woman. You're the shame of this family." My son stayed silent. 10 minutes later, she turned pale when she heard what the judge said. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all started. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The bank statement fell out of Amber's purse on a Tuesday afternoon in January 2024. I wasn't snooping. I need to make that clear because later, when everything went to hell, Amber accused me of being a nosy old woman who couldn't mind her own business. But I wasn't snooping. I was picking up Grace from school like I did every Tuesday and Thursday. And Amber had left her purse on my kitchen counter when she dropped off Grace's overnight bag that morning. The purse tipped over when I moved it to wipe down the counter. The statement slid out, face up, right there on my scratched laminate countertop that I couldn't afford to replace. Chase Bank, Amber L. Mitchell. Balance, 89,247, 16. I stood there with the dish rag in my hand, water dripping onto the floor, staring at those numbers. $89,000. My hand started shaking before my brain could even process what I was seeing. I'd been living in this apartment for almost 2 years now, ever since I sold the house. The house where Harold and I raised James, where we celebrated 40 years of marriage, where Harold died in our bed with my hand in his in February 2022. I sold it 3 weeks after the funeral for $340,000 because James said he needed help starting his medical consulting business. He'd lost his job at the hospital, he said. The market was tight, he said. He just needed a bridge loan to get his own practice off the ground. I gave him $180,000, every penny I had left after paying off the mortgage. Then the monthly requests started. April 2022, he called saying he needed $5,500 for office equipment. May, another $5,500 for licensing fees. June, July, August. Every single month for 21 months straight, I sent money. Sometimes it was $5,500. Sometimes it was more for emergencies, a medical conference he had to attend, a malpractice insurance premium. His car broke down and he needed it to visit clients. I sent it all. My retirement checks came in at $1,840 a month. My rent here was $950. I learned to eat a lot of rice and beans. I stopped buying new clothes. I walked to the grocery store instead of driving to save on gas. I did it because he was my son, because Harold would have wanted me to take care of him, because that's what mothers do. And now here was Amber's bank statement showing $89,000 in an account I didn't even know existed. I picked up the statement with trembling fingers. The address listed wasn't their house on Maple Street. It was a P.O. box in downtown Portland. I scanned the transactions from December. ATM withdrawal, $400. Nordstrom, $1,200. Delta Airlines, $3,800. Sephora, $340. Another Delta charge, $2,100. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe right. The front door opened and Grace walked in, her backpack dragging on the floor. She was 14 now, tall and quiet, with James's serious eyes. "Hi, Grandma," she said, dropping the backpack by the door. I shoved the statement back into Amber's purse so fast I nearly knocked the whole thing over again. "Hi, sweetie. How was school?" "Fine." She headed straight for the refrigerator. "Can I have a snack?" "Of course." My voice sounded normal. I don't know how. I made her a peanut butter sandwich and watched her eat it at my tiny kitchen table, the same table I'd bought at Goodwill when I moved in here because I couldn't afford anything else. Grace didn't seem to notice that my hands were still shaking, that I kept glancing at Amber's purse like it might explode. Amber picked Grace up at 6, breezing in wearing yoga pants that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget and a puffy jacket I recognized from the Nordstrom charge. "Thanks, Lorraine," she said. She always called me Lorraine, never Mom, never even Mother Mitchell, just Lorraine, like I was the hired help. She grabbed her purse without checking inside. "James is working late again tonight. Big client meeting." What kind of client meeting? The words came out before I could stop them. Amber's smile tightened just a fraction. Medical consulting stuff. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I'd never actually seen James's office. He said it was in a shared workspace downtown, and it wasn't really set up for visitors. I'd offered to bring him lunch once early on, but he said it would be too distracting. After they left, I sat in my apartment as the winter dark came down. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there on my second-hand couch with the broken spring that dug into my left hip, staring at nothing. Harold and I had been married for 40 years. We'd worked hard, saved carefully, planned for retirement. We were going to travel. We were going to visit national parks and take that Alaskan cruise we'd always talked about. Then Harold had a heart attack in our bedroom at 3 a.m. and died before the ambulance arrived. I was 64 years old and suddenly alone. James had been so supportive after the funeral. He'd helped me sort through Harold's things, sat with me while I cried, told me everything would be okay. When he suggested I sell the house, he made it sound so reasonable. The house was too big for one person, he said. I'd be rattling around in there, lonely, surrounded by memories. Better to downsize, take some of the pressure off, help him get his business started. We'd be helping each other. I believed him. I believed every word. The next morning, I waited until Grace was at school and Amber would be at her Pilates class. She posted about it every Wednesday on Facebook. Then I drove to their house on Maple Street, the house I'd helped them buy 6 years ago with a $40,000 down payment from Harold's life insurance. I had a key. James had given it to me when they moved in, said I should have it in case of emergencies. I'd used it maybe 3 times, always when they were home, always after asking permission. But this was an emergency, wasn't it? The house was silent when I let myself in. I stood in the entryway, my heart hammering, feeling like a criminal in my own son's home. The living room looked like something from a magazine. New furniture, all of it. Cream-colored sectional sofa, glass coffee table, abstract art on the walls. Nothing from when James was growing up. Nothing of Harold's. They'd taken the Afghan I'd crocheted for their wedding and hidden it somewhere, or thrown it away. I walked through the kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, everything gleaming and perfect. On the refrigerator, held up by a magnet, was a postcard. Cancun, Mexico. Wish you were here. I pulled it down. The postmark was from last July. July 2023. That was when James had called saying he needed $8,000 for an emergency medical conference in Chicago. He'd sounded so stressed on the phone. The conference was mandatory for his licensing, he said. He was so sorry to ask, he said. I'd sent the money the same day, even though it meant I'd have to skip my blood pressure medication refill that month. I told myself it was fine. The medication could wait. My son's career was more important. I turned the postcard over. The handwriting was Amber's, loopy and girlish. Amazing week. Resort is incredible. Can't believe we almost didn't come. Love you both. It was addressed to Amber's parents in Seattle. My legs went weak. I grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. They'd gone to Cancun. They'd spent my money, the money I'd starved myself to send, on a Mexican vacation while I sat in my apartment eating rice and canned vegetables, rationing my medication, wondering if I'd have enough left over to buy Grace a birthday present. I don't remember walking upstairs. I don't remember opening the door to the master bedroom. But suddenly I was standing there, looking at their enormous bed with its dozen decorative pillows, and I was opening Amber's nightstand drawer. More bank statements. A whole stack of them, going back 2 years. I sat on the edge of their bed, that expensive bed with its memory foam and Egyptian cotton sheets, and I went through every single one. $89,000 now. But 6 months ago, it had been $63,000. A year ago, $41,000. The deposits were irregular but frequent. $3,000 here, $7,000 there. And the spending, God, the spending. Restaurants I couldn't afford to even look at the menu. Shopping sprees at boutiques in downtown Portland. More plane tickets, hotels, spa days. I found receipts tucked into the back of the drawer. A receipt from a jewelry store for a Cartier bracelet, $6,200. A receipt from a furniture store, $11,000 for the living room sectional. Another from a travel agency, $14,500 for deluxe Hawaii package, 2 guests. They'd gone to Hawaii. When had they gone to Hawaii? I tried to remember. October 2023. James had called saying he was attending a medical symposium in Boston. He'd needed $9,000 to cover the costs. I'd sent it. He'd lied. They'd both lied. Over and over and over again, they'd lied. I sat there on their bed holding those receipts, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. It wasn't anger yet. It was something else. Something quieter and more dangerous. It was clarity. My phone rang. James's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice surprisingly steady. Hello? Mom, hi. He sounded cheerful, relaxed. Just checking in. How are you doing? I'm fine. The words came automatically. How's work? Busy, busy. Got a lot of new clients coming in. Things are really taking off. That's good. I looked down at the Cartier receipt in my hand. That's really good, honey. Listen, I hate to ask, but we've got a situation. The office lease is coming up for renewal and they're raising the rate. I'm going to need about $7,000 to cover it. Can you help me out? $7,000. My hands clenched around the receipt, crumpling it. Mom, you there? I'm here. I took a breath. James, I need to ask you something. Sure, what's up? When was the last time you were in Chicago? For a conference? Silence. It stretched out for 3 seconds, then 5. Chicago? I don't know, Mom. I go to a lot of conferences. Why? Just wondering. I carefully smoothed out the crumpled receipt. And Boston? Were you in Boston in October? Another pause. Mom, what's this about? I'm just trying to remember. It's hard to keep track sometimes. Look, I really need to get back to work. Can you send the money by Friday? The lease payment is due and I don't want to lose the office. I stood up, still holding all those receipts and bank statements. Through the bedroom window, I could see Amber's Mercedes in the driveway, the one they'd bought last year. The one James said was a necessary business expense. Mom? I'll think about it, I said, and hung up before he could respond. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I locked the door behind me and drove home in a daze. Back in my apartment, I made myself a cup of tea I couldn't afford and sat at my Goodwill table, staring at the wall. That's when I noticed the photos on my refrigerator. Pictures of Grace at various ages, all of them printed out on regular paper because I couldn't afford to get them professionally printed. One photo showed all 4 of us last Christmas, Grace, James, Amber, and me, taken at their house. We were standing in front of their enormous Christmas tree, the one decorated with expensive ornaments. In the photo, Amber stood slightly apart from the rest of us, her smile bright and perfect and completely fake. She had her hand possessively on James's arm. And James, my James, the little boy I'd raised alone after his father died when he was 12, looked at his wife with something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Not love. Not adoration. Fear. I pulled the photo down and looked at it more closely. Yes, that was fear in his eyes, and Amber's grip on his arm was tight, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. My phone buzzed. A text message from Amber. Thanks again for watching Grace yesterday. BTW. Did you see my purse? Think I left it at your place. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I texted back, yes, you did. I'll drop it off tomorrow. I set the phone down and stared at that photo for a long time. The expensive tree, the expensive house, the expensive everything, all of it paid for with my rent money, my food money, my medication money, all of it built on lies, and my son, standing there terrified of his own wife, too weak or too broken to tell me the truth. I thought about Harold, about how hard he'd worked to build a life for us. I thought about the house we'd lost, the retirement we'd planned, the future that had been stolen. And I thought about Grace, 14 years old, growing up in a house built on fraud and manipulation. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I picked up my phone and called information for the number of a lawyer. I didn't sleep that night after calling the lawyer. I lay in my bed, the one I'd bought at a discount furniture outlet for $300 because it was all I could afford, staring at the ceiling while my neighbor's TV blared through the thin walls. At 2 in the morning, I was still awake, going over every conversation I'd had with James for the past 2 years, looking for the moment when the lies started. Maybe they'd been there from the beginning. Maybe I'd just been too desperate to see them. The lawyer's receptionist had scheduled me for Friday at 10, 3 days away. I had to wait 3 days before I could even begin to untangle this mess. 3 days of pretending everything was normal while my chest felt like it was caving in. Thursday morning, I dropped Amber's purse off at their house. I rang the doorbell even though I still had the key. Amber answered wearing athleisure that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. "Thanks, Lorraine." She took the purse, didn't invite me in. "You didn't look through it, did you?" She said it like a joke, but her eyes weren't joking at all. "Of course not," I lied. She smiled, all teeth. "Good. I'd hate to think you were that kind of person." I drove away shaking again, the anger finally starting to surface. That kind of person. What kind of person was she? The kind who stole from her husband's mother? The kind who took an old woman's rent money and spent it on jewelry? When I got home, I called James. He didn't answer. I called again an hour later. Voicemail. I sent a text. "James, I need to talk to you. It's important." 3 hours later, he texted back, "Busy day. What's up?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Is everything all right?" Just, "What's up?" Like I was bothering him. I called him. This time he answered. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something." "James, I need you to be honest with me." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Where does your business money go?" Silence. I could hear voices in the background. Someone laughing. "What do you mean?" he finally said. "I mean, I've given you $127,000 over the past 2 years. Where is it? Where's your office?" "Mom, I don't—" He stopped. "Where is this coming from?" I found Amber's bank statements. The line went completely silent. No background noise, nothing. He must have walked away from wherever he was. "You went through her things?" His voice was different now, tight and scared. "They fell out of her purse." "James, there's almost $90,000 in an account I didn't know existed. And I found receipts. Cancun, Hawaii, a Cartier bracelet. You told me you were at medical conferences." "Mom?" He sounded like he was choking. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." "I can't." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I can't talk about this right now." "Why not? Are you with her?" "Mom, please." There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Desperation. "Just drop it. Please." "Drop it?" "James, that's my retirement money. That's my life. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment eating rice and beans so you and Amber can go to Mexico and— "Lorraine?" A woman's voice came on the line. Amber. She'd taken his phone. "I think you need to calm down." My hands clenched around my phone so hard I thought I'd crack the screen. "Put my son back on." "James is very upset right now. You've accused him of some pretty terrible things." Her voice was smooth, reasonable, like she was talking to a confused child. "I think it's best if you give him some space. Amber, I want to talk to my son, and I want you to stop harassing my husband at work." The smoothness vanished, replaced by ice. "He's been under a lot of stress lately, and your paranoid accusations aren't helping." "Paranoid?" I stood up, pacing my tiny living room. "I saw the bank statements. I saw the receipts. You saw private financial documents that you had no right to see." Her voice got harder. "That's called snooping, Lorraine. And honestly, it's kind of pathetic. James and I have tried to be patient with you. We know you're lonely since Harold died. But this is too much." "I'm not lonely. I'm being robbed." Amber laughed. Actually laughed. "Robbed? Is that what you think? James has been supporting you for 2 years. We let you watch Grace. We include you in family events. We make sure you're not forgotten. And this is how you repay us? By making accusations? Supporting me? I've given you $127,000. You've given James money to help with his business, yes. That was your choice. No one forced you. And now you're having regrets and trying to make it our fault. She paused. You know what? I think you need help, professional help. This obsession with money, going through people's private things, these paranoid delusions, it's not healthy. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. Let me talk to James. No, he's too upset. You've done enough damage for one day. Her voice softened into fake concern. Lorraine, we care about you. We really do. But you need to work through these issues on your own. Maybe talk to a therapist. In the meantime, I think it's best if you don't contact James for a while. You can't keep me from talking to my son. I'm not keeping you from anything. I'm protecting my husband from harassment. If you keep this up, we might need to consider a restraining order. The line went dead. I stood there in my apartment, phone in hand, unable to process what had just happened. A restraining order. She'd threatened me with a restraining order. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Not James. A Seattle area code I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Lorraine Mitchell? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, who's this? This is Nicole Brennan, Amber's sister. A pause. I think we need to talk. I sat down slowly on my couch. About what? About the problems you're causing for my sister's family. Nicole's voice was crisp, educated, the kind of voice used to getting its way. Amber called me very upset. She said you've been making wild accusations about money. They're not wild accusations. They're facts. Facts. Nicole said it like the word tasted bad. You went through Amber's personal financial documents without permission. That's a crime, you know. Identity theft. Financial fraud. You could go to jail. I didn't steal anything. I found bank statements that prove what? That my sister has her own money? That's not illegal, Lorraine. What is illegal is you invading her privacy and then harassing her and James about it. The money in that account came from me. I sent it to James for his business. You gave James money as a gift. Gifts aren't returnable. Nicole's voice got colder. Look, I'm trying to help you here. Amber could press charges. She could file a police report about you breaking into her house and going through her things. She could ruin your life. But she won't, because she's a good person who understands you're just a lonely old woman who's not thinking clearly. I didn't break in. I have a key. A key you used without permission to enter their home and snoop through private documents. Do you really want to explain that to a judge? My mouth went dry. What do you want? I want you to leave my sister alone. Stop calling James. Stop making accusations. Stop causing drama. You gave them money willingly, and now you're having buyer's remorse. That's your problem, not theirs. Nicole, please, just tell me the truth. Did Amber use my money for personal expenses? She laughed, the same cold laugh as her sister. You really are delusional. Get help, Lorraine, and stay away from my sister's family. She hung up. I sat there on my couch, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. They'd coordinated this. Amber had called her sister, and Nicole had called me within minutes to threaten me, to shut me up. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amber, careful what you say, Lorraine. James chose me. He'll always choose me. And if you keep pushing this, you'll lose him forever. You'll lose Grace too. Is that what you want? My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Another text came through, this one from a number I didn't recognize. This is Nicole. I hope you understand now. Drop it. I looked around my apartment, at the Goodwill furniture, at the photos of Grace on my refrigerator, at the empty space where Harold's chair used to sit before I had to leave it behind because it wouldn't fit in this place. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd back down, go away, accept being robbed and threatened and silenced. They didn't know me at all. I opened my phone and pulled up the calendar. Friday at 10. The lawyer's office. I had the address written down. I had copies of the bank statements I'd photographed with my phone before putting them back. I had the receipts. I had the proof. Grace was supposed to come over on Tuesday. I wondered if Amber would let her. Or if they'd keep her away now, punish me by taking away the one person I loved most in this world. The thought of not seeing Grace made my chest ache worse than anything else. But I couldn't stop now. If I stopped, if I backed down, what would I be teaching her? That it's okay to let people steal from you? That family can treat you like garbage and you just have to take it? I thought about Harold, about what he would say if he could see this. He'd be furious. He'd be heartbroken, but he'd also tell me to fight. Harold never backed down from doing what was right, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Amber. Think about Grace before you do something stupid. There it was, the real threat. Not jail, not restraining orders. Grace. I put my phone down and walked to the window. Outside, Portland was gray and drizzly, the January rain coming down steady. People walked by with umbrellas, living their normal lives, not knowing that mine was falling apart. I thought about calling James again, but what would I say? What could I say to a man who'd let his wife threaten his own mother? A man who'd lied for 2 years straight, who'd taken $127,000 and spent it on vacations while I rationed my blood pressure medication? No, I was done begging, done explaining, done asking for basic human decency from people who clearly didn't have any. Friday at 10. I'd talk to the lawyer. I'd find out what my options were, and then I'd decide what came next. My phone rang. James. Finally. I answered. James? Mom. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. Mom, please don't do this. Don't do what? Ask for the truth? You don't understand. It's complicated. I can't. He trailed off. Can't what? I can't talk about it. Not now. Maybe not ever. He sounded broken. Please, just trust me. Trust you? James, you've lied to me for 2 years. I know. He was definitely crying now. I know, and I'm sorry. But I can't fix it. Not right now. Why not? Silence. Then, Mom, I have to go. And he hung up. My own son hung up on me. I sat in the dark as the rain came down outside. And for the first time since Harold died, I felt completely alone. Friday morning came cold and wet. I put on my best outfit, a navy blazer I'd bought at Walmart 3 years ago, and gray slacks that were getting loose because I'd lost weight. Not the intentional kind of weight loss, the kind that happens when you're choosing between buying groceries and paying the electric bill. The law office of Chen & Associates was downtown, in a brick building with an elevator that smelled like lemon cleaner. I'd found them online, filtering for pro bono and elder law. The receptionist had been kind on the phone, said they did free consultations for seniors in financial distress. Financial distress. That was the polite term for what was happening to me. The lawyer's name was Sarah Chen. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with black hair pulled into a neat bun and glasses that made her look serious. Her office was small but organized, law books lining the walls, a photo of 2 kids on her desk. Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for coming in. She shook my hand, gestured to a chair. Tell me what's going on. So I did. I told her everything. About Harold dying, about selling the house, about the $180,000 I gave James for his business that didn't exist, about the monthly payments totaling $127,000, about the bank statements and the receipts and the trips to Cancun and Hawaii while I ate rice and beans. Sarah took notes on a yellow legal pad, her face getting more serious as I talked. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with something that might have been pity. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you some questions. Did you sign any contracts with your son? Any formal loan agreements? No, it was family. I was helping him. Did you keep records of the transfers? Some. I pulled out my phone, showed her the photos I'd taken of Amber's bank statements. And I have my own bank records showing every payment I sent. She studied the photos, zooming in on the numbers. This account is solely in Amber's name? Yes. And you never sent money directly to this account? All transfers went to James? That's right. He gave me his checking account number. I sent everything there. Sarah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the legal pad. Okay, here's what I can tell you. You have a case. Not a great case, but a case. The problem is proving where your money went. If James received it and then transferred it to Amber, that's between them legally. Unless we can prove fraud, which means showing James intentionally deceived you. He did deceive me. He said the money was for his business. There is no business. Can you prove there's no business? Has he filed any paperwork? DBA, LLC, anything? I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. We'd need to check. She made another note. The bank statements you photographed help, but we'd need Amber to testify about the source of those deposits. And I doubt she'll cooperate. My chest felt tight again. So what can I do? Sarah's expression softened. We can file a civil suit. Sue both James and Amber for fraud and financial elder abuse. Oregon has strong laws protecting seniors from financial exploitation. If we can prove they knowingly deceived you, we can get your money back plus damages. But it will cost money. Court fees, filing fees, possibly expert witnesses. And it will take time, probably a year or more. And Mrs. Mitchell. She paused. If we win, if we get a judgment against them, they'll have to liquidate assets to pay you back. That means their house, their cars, everything. Your son could lose everything. I looked down at my hands. They were old hands now, wrinkled and spotted with age. The wedding ring Harold gave me 42 years ago was loose on my finger. I'd lost so much weight it kept spinning around. Is there another option? I asked quietly. You could try mediation. Get a mediator to sit down with all of you. Try to work out a payment plan. It's cheaper and faster than court. They won't agree to that. Amber already threatened me with a restraining order. Sarah's jaw tightened. She what? I told her about the phone calls, about Nicole's threats, about Amber's texts. Sarah asked to see the texts. I showed her. Careful what you say. James chose me. Think about Grace before you do something stupid. Sarah's face went hard. This is intimidation, possibly witness tampering if you decide to pursue legal action. Mrs. Mitchell, these people are not playing around. I know. My voice came out small. I need you to understand something. Sarah leaned forward. If you pursue this, it's going to get ugly. They'll fight back. They'll make accusations about you, try to paint you as confused or vindictive. They might try to keep you from seeing your granddaughter. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I thought about Grace, about her quiet smile, about Tuesday afternoons making her peanut butter sandwiches, about being the only stable thing in her life besides school. I don't know, I admitted. You don't have to decide today. Sarah closed her folder. Think about it. Talk to friends, family if you have any who aren't involved in this. Consider what you're willing to risk and what you're willing to lose. Then call me. I nodded. How much do you charge? For seniors in financial abuse cases, I work on contingency. I take a percentage of whatever we recover. But you'd still need to cover court costs up front, probably $2,000 to $3,000. $2,000. I had $347 in my checking account. My next Social Security check wasn't due for 2 weeks. Sarah must have seen something in my face. There are legal aid funds available. I can help you apply. It takes time, but how much time? A few weeks, maybe a month. A month. In a month, Amber could move that money. They could sell the house, disappear, take Grace to another state. I'd never see any of it again. Thank you, I said, standing up. I'll think about it. Sarah walked me to the door. Mrs. Mitchell, one more thing. Document everything. Document every conversation, every text, every interaction. If this goes to court, we'll need it all. I drove home in a daze. The rain had turned to sleet, making the roads slick. I passed the house on Maple Street on the way, couldn't help but look. Amber's Mercedes was in the driveway. The house looked warm and solid, lights on in the kitchen. My $40,000 down payment. My monthly contributions. All of it right there. And none of it mine anymore. Back in my apartment, I made tea I didn't drink and sat at my table staring at the wall. The couple next door was fighting again, their voices carrying through the thin walls. I heard a door slam, then silence. I thought about Harold. We'd met when I was 22, working as a secretary at the hospital where he was doing his residency. He was kind and funny and looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the world. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with 20 guests. Honeymoon in the Oregon coast because it was all we could afford. We'd had James 2 years after that. Harold had been so excited, carrying around baby photos in his wallet, boring everyone at work with stories about his son. When James was 12 and Harold's practice was finally established enough that we were comfortable, Harold had a massive stroke. He was only 47. The life insurance barely covered his funeral and 6 months of bills. I'd gone back to work as a medical secretary, put James through college on student loans and my salary, watched him graduate and become a respiratory therapist. I was so proud. My son, helping people, making good money, building a life. And then he met Amber. I should have seen it then. The way she looked at our house, calculating its value. The way she asked questions about Harold's life insurance, about my retirement plans. The way she smiled when I mentioned selling the house was getting to be too much work. But I didn't see it. I was too grateful that James had found someone, too hopeful that I'd finally have the daughter I never had. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mrs. Mitchell? This is Principal Edwards from Grace's school. My heart jumped. Is Grace okay? She's fine physically. But I wanted to let you know she was very upset in class today. Crying? Wouldn't talk to anyone. Her mother picked her up early. A pause. Grace kept asking for you. She wanted us to call you, but Mrs. Mitchell insisted she'd handle it. Can I talk to her? Can you give me Amber's number? I'm sorry, I can't do that. I just thought you should know. After she hung up, I tried calling James. Straight to voicemail. I called Amber. She answered on the first ring. What? I heard Grace was upset at school. Can I talk to her? No. Amber, please. I'm her grandmother. If she's hurting because of you. Amber's voice was ice. She heard us fighting about you. She knows you're trying to destroy our family. She's confused and scared, and it's your fault. My fault? You stole? I didn't steal anything. And you need to stop saying that before I sue you for slander. She paused. Grace doesn't want to see you right now. She needs space from all this drama. Let me talk to her. Let me explain. Explain what? That you're accusing her parents of being thieves? That you're trying to take away her home? Amber laughed, bitter. No, you don't get to traumatize her more than you already have. Amber. The line went dead. I sat there holding my phone, feeling something break inside my chest. Grace. They were using Grace, keeping her from me, poisoning her against me. I looked at my wedding ring, still loose on my finger. The only valuable thing I had left. Harold had saved for 3 months to buy it. White gold with a small diamond. It was probably worth $800, maybe $1,000 if I was lucky. Enough to cover part of the lawyer's fees. Enough to start the fight. I twisted the ring off my finger, felt the weight of it in my palm. 42 years of marriage. 42 years of love and partnership and building a life together. And now I might have to sell it to fight the son we raised together. Outside, the sleet had turned to snow. I watched it fall in the gray afternoon light, coating everything in white. Clean, pure, covering all the ugly truth underneath. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Grace. I stole Mom's old phone. Grandma, what's happening? Why can't I see you? I miss you. My vision blurred with tears. I typed back with shaking fingers. I miss you too, sweetheart. Everything will be okay. I promise. But I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know if anything would ever be okay again. I sat in my apartment as the snow fell outside, holding my wedding ring in one hand and my phone in the other, and I made a decision. I wasn't giving up. Not on myself, not on Grace, not on the life Harold and I had worked so hard to build, even if it meant losing everything, even if it meant losing James, because some things are worth more than peace. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. I sold the ring on Monday morning at a pawn shop on 82nd Avenue. The man behind the bulletproof glass barely looked at it before offering me $650. I knew it was worth more, but I didn't have time to shop around. I needed the money now. He counted out the bills slowly, sliding them under the glass partition one at a time, 600s and a 50. I folded them into my wallet where Harold's photo still sat in the clear plastic sleeve, his smile frozen in time from 20 years ago. "Sorry about this, honey," I whispered to his picture. Sarah Chen had given me a name, Marcus Webb, private investigator. "He's expensive," she'd warned, "but he's good. If there's something to find, he'll find it." Webb's office was above a Thai restaurant in southeast Portland. The stairs were narrow and smelled like pad thai and cigarettes. His door had frosted glass with his name painted in peeling gold letters. He answered my knock wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, coffee mug in hand, 50s maybe, with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp blue eyes that looked right through me. "Mrs. Mitchell?" "Yes. Come in." He gestured to a chair across from his cluttered desk. "Sarah told me a little about your situation. Elder financial abuse case?" I sat down and told him everything again. It was getting easier, the telling. The words came out flat now, emotionless, like I was reading someone else's story. Webb took notes on an iPad, occasionally stopping me to ask questions. "The offshore account," he said when I mentioned the bank statements. "That's interesting. Most people doing this kind of thing keep it domestic. Using an offshore account suggests sophistication, planning. Can you prove where the money came from? If it's there, I can prove it." He named his rate, $200 an hour, plus expenses. Minimum retainer of $1,500. I opened my wallet, counted out all $600 bills plus the 50. "This is what I have." Webb looked at the money, then at me. Something in his face softened just a fraction. "That'll work, for now." He spent the next 20 minutes having me sign forms and authorization papers. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to be straight with you. People who do what your son and daughter-in-law have done, they're usually pretty good at covering their tracks. This might take time." "How much time?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll start with public records, property transfers, business filings, then move into the financial stuff if I can access it legally." He paused. "You understand I can't break the law, right? I can't hack into bank accounts or steal documents." "I understand." "Good." He stood up, the meeting apparently over. "I'll call you when I have something. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. Every interaction, every text, every threat. It all helps." I left his office feeling lighter somehow, like I'd finally done something instead of just sitting in my apartment waiting for my life to fall apart. That feeling lasted until Tuesday afternoon when Grace didn't show up. I'd been waiting since 3 o'clock, her usual pickup time from school. I'd made peanut butter sandwiches, bought the good chips she liked with money I didn't have. By 4:30, I knew she wasn't coming. I called James. Voicemail. I called Amber. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding breathless like she'd been exercising. "What do you want, Lorraine?" "Grace was supposed to come over today. Plans changed." "Amber, please. You can't keep her from me. I can do whatever I want. She's my daughter." A pause. "And honestly, after the way you've been acting, I don't think it's healthy for Grace to be around you right now." "The way I've been acting? You mean asking for my money back?" "I mean harassing us, making wild accusations. You're clearly not well, Lorraine. James and I have discussed it, and we think it's best if Grace keeps her distance until you get help." My hand clenched around the phone. "You can't do this." "Watch me." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen with the peanut butter sandwiches on the counter, chips in a bowl, everything ready for a granddaughter who wasn't coming. I wrapped up the sandwiches and put them in the refrigerator. I'd eat them later. Waste not, want not. That night, I got a text from Grace's stolen phone. "Mom found the phone. I'm sorry, Grandma." "I love you." Then nothing. No more messages. That lifeline, gone. Wednesday morning, my neighbor knocked on my door. Mrs. Patel, a widow like me, probably in her 70s. "Lorraine, I wanted to check on you. I heard you crying last night. I hadn't realized the walls were that thin." "I'm fine. Just having a hard time." She looked at me with knowing eyes. "Family trouble?" "Something like that. My son and his wife stole from me too," she said quietly. 7 years ago. Took everything I had saved. I had to get a job at 73 years old, working at Walmart as a greeter. I stared at her. "What did you do?" "I forgave them. she smiled sadly. And I learned to live on less, because fighting them would have cost more than losing the money. It would have cost me my grandchildren. After she left, I sat on my couch thinking about that. Was she right? Should I just let it go, accept the loss, maintain the relationship? Then I remembered Amber's face when she took James's phone away from him. I remembered the texts, the threats, the way they'd taken Grace from me anyway, even though I hadn't fought back yet. No, Mrs. Patel was wrong. Giving in wouldn't save anything. They'd already taken Grace. They'd already destroyed the relationship. All that was left was to get back what was mine. Thursday afternoon, Webb called. I've got something. Can you come to my office? I drove there through rush hour traffic, my heart pounding the whole way. Webb was waiting with a folder and his iPad. Sit down, he said. This is going to be a lot. He spread papers across his desk, public records showing property transfers, business registrations, tax documents. First thing, James never registered a business. No DBA, no LLC, no business license of any kind. There is no medical consulting company. I nodded. I'd expected that. Second, the house on Maple Street, purchased 6 years ago for $425,000. Your $40,000 was the down payment. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled up a document. 3 months ago, James took out a home equity line of credit for $75,000. Guess where that money went? Amber's account? Close. A different account, also offshore, also in Amber's name only. She's been systematically moving money out of their joint accounts and into accounts James can't access. My stomach dropped. She's planning to leave him. That'd be my guess. And there's more. He handed me a printout. I found this on social media. Amber's sister Nicole? She works for an offshore banking consultancy. She specializes in helping high-net-worth individuals hide assets during divorces. So, this was planned, from the beginning. Looks that way. Webb pulled up another document. I also found these. Credit card statements James filed for a business expense deduction on his taxes. Except they're not business expenses. Hotels in Cancun, restaurants in Hawaii, shopping sprees. And he claimed them all as deductions, which means he committed tax fraud. I looked at the papers, at the evidence of lies stacked on top of lies. My son hadn't just been weak or manipulated. He'd been an active participant. He'd lied on his taxes. He'd taken out loans using a house I'd helped buy. There's one more thing. Webb's voice got quieter. I have a contact at Providence Hospital where James works. He lost a major contract this week. Hospital's downsizing his department. He'll probably be laid off by the end of the month. Karma. Immediate and swift. What do I do with all this? I asked. You take it to your lawyer. This is enough to file criminal charges for fraud, not just a civil suit. The DA might actually be interested in this case. He gathered all the papers into a folder. I'm going to put all of this on a thumb drive for you. Keep it somewhere safe. Make copies if you can. He worked on his computer for a few minutes, then handed me a small USB drive. Everything's on here. Bank records, credit card statements, property documents, social media screenshots, everything. I held it in my palm. This tiny thing, this piece of plastic and metal, held the evidence that could destroy my son's life, could send him to prison, could take away everything he had, could get me back my money, my dignity, my life. Mrs. Mitchell? Webb was watching me. You okay? I don't know. I looked up at him. If I do this, if I file charges, what happens to Grace? That's not my area. But if James goes to prison and Amber leaves him, which seems likely, Grace would need somewhere to go. Could I get custody? You'd have a strong case. The biological parent's unfit. You as the stable grandparent. He paused. But that's a question for your lawyer. I left his office with the thumb drive in my purse, feeling its weight like it was made of lead instead of plastic. I drove to Sarah Chen's office without calling first, walked in and asked if she had a few minutes. She saw me immediately, probably because I looked like I was about to fall apart. I handed her the thumb drive. I have evidence. She plugged it into her computer and started reading. I watched her face change as she scrolled through the files. Surprise, then anger, then grim satisfaction. Mrs. Mitchell, she said finally. This is enough. This is absolutely enough. We can file criminal charges. We can go after both of them. What will happen to James? If convicted? Prison, probably. 3 to 5 years for fraud of this amount. Plus restitution, fines, probation. She looked at me directly. This is serious. You need to be sure. I thought about Grace crying at school, about the peanut butter sandwiches in my refrigerator, about my wedding ring in a pawn shop on 82nd Avenue, about Harold, who would never have let anyone treat me this way. I'm sure, I said. File the charges. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay. I'll prepare the paperwork. We'll need to meet with the DA's office, probably next week. Are you prepared for what comes next? The investigation, the arrest, all of it? No. I stood up. But I'm doing it anyway. That night, I got a phone call from James. He sounded terrible, voice hoarse like he'd been crying. Mom, I lost my job. I know. My voice was flat. How do you know? I didn't answer. Mom, I need help. I need money to get us through until I find something else. Just a few thousand to cover the mortgage. No. Silence. What? I said no, James. I'm not giving you any more money. Ever. Mom, please. We're going to lose the house. You should have thought about that before you stole $127,000 from me. I didn't steal. He stopped. How did you know the exact amount? I know everything, James. Everything. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the rain had started again. I sat in the dark and listened to it drum against the window, holding the thumb drive in my hand, and I didn't feel guilty at all. The Multnomah County Courthouse smelled like floor polish and fear. I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 4C, hands folded in my lap, waiting. Sarah Chen sat beside me, reviewing documents one last time. Remember, she said quietly, stay calm no matter what they say. Don't engage. Let me do the talking. I nodded. I'd barely slept in the 3 days since we filed charges. The DA had moved fast, calling it a clear case of elder financial abuse. Criminal charges against both James and Amber, a civil suit for restitution, and a temporary restraining order requiring them to stay 50 feet away from me. They'd violated it yesterday. Amber had driven by my apartment 4 times, slow enough that I could see her face through the windshield. She was smiling. The courtroom doors opened. A bailiff called our case number. Sarah stood, touched my elbow. Ready? I wasn't. But I stood anyway. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Patricia Morrison sat behind the bench, a black woman in her 60s with reading glasses and an expression that said she'd seen everything. The prosecutor, a young man named David Tang, sat at one table. Sarah led me to another. Across the aisle, James and Amber sat with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be here. James wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table, shoulders hunched. Amber stared right at me with pure hatred in her eyes. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost $500, pearls at her throat, hair perfect, playing the part of the respectable victim. All rise, the bailiff said. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents in front of her, taking her time. The silence stretched out. I could hear Amber breathing across the aisle, sharp little angry breaths. Finally, the judge looked up. This is a preliminary hearing for criminal charges of elder financial abuse and fraud, along with a motion for civil restitution and a petition for emergency custody. Mr. Tang, your opening statement. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of elder abuse I've seen. Mrs. Lorraine Mitchell, a 66-year-old widow living on Social Security, was systematically defrauded by her son and daughter-in-law over a period of nearly 2 years. The defendants obtained $127,000 through false pretenses, claiming the money was needed for a medical consulting business that never existed. Instead, they used the funds for personal luxuries while Mrs. Mitchell lived in poverty. That's not true, Amber said loudly. Judge Morrison looked at her over her glasses. Mrs. Mitchell, you'll have your chance to speak. Another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Amber's lawyer put a hand on her arm. She shook it off but stayed quiet. Tang continued, presenting the evidence. Bank records, the thumb drive data, property documents, tax returns showing James claimed personal expenses as business deductions. By the time he finished, 30 minutes had passed and the case against them looked insurmountable. Ms. Chen? Judge Morrison nodded at Sarah. Sarah stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell isn't here just for justice. She's here because she's been financially destroyed by the two people she trusted most. She sold her home to help them. She sent them her rent money, her food money, her medication money. She now lives in a one-bedroom apartment eating rice and beans while the defendants vacation in Cancun and Hawaii. Your Honor, if I may... Their lawyer started to stand. You'll have your turn, Mr. Breslin. The judge waved him down. Sarah pulled out photos, passed copies to the judge and the prosecutor. These are from the defendant's social media accounts. Here's Mrs. Amber Mitchell in Cancun, July 2023. This trip cost approximately $8,000, paid for with money Mrs. Mitchell sent for a supposedly mandatory medical conference. I saw Amber's face go red. Here's a receipt for a Cartier bracelet, $6,200. Here's another for furniture, $11,000. All purchased within weeks of receiving money from Mrs. Mitchell, who was at the time rationing her blood pressure medication. Judge Morrison studied the photos. Mr. Breslin, I hope you have a compelling explanation for this. Breslin stood, smoothing his tie. Your Honor, my clients maintain that all money received from Mrs. Mitchell was given freely as gifts. There was no contract, no loan agreement, no formal arrangement. Mrs. Mitchell chose to help her son during a difficult financial period. That's not fraud. That's family support. Freely given gifts, Judge Morrison repeated, while being told the money was for a non-existent business? My clients dispute that characterization. There may have been miscommunications, but... Miscommunications, the judge's voice went flat. Mr. Breslin, I've reviewed the evidence. Your clients filed false tax returns claiming personal expenses as business deductions. That's not miscommunication. That's fraud. Your Honor, my clients are willing to negotiate a payment plan. No. Amber stood up, ignoring her lawyer's attempt to pull her back down. No, we're not. That money was a gift. She gave it to us willingly. Mrs. Mitchell, sit down, the judge said. She's lying. Amber's voice got louder. She gave us that money because she wanted to feel important, because she was lonely after her husband died and needed to feel needed. Now she regrets it, and she's trying to destroy our family. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Morrison started, she went through my private documents. She invaded my home. She's been harassing us for months. Amber turned to look at me directly. You're pathetic. A bitter old woman who can't stand that her son chose me over you. Amber, James whispered, finally looking up. Stop. No, I won't stop. She took a step toward me. You want your money back? Fine. Take it. Take everything. But you'll never see Grace again. Never. Sarah stood up. Your Honor, the defendant is threatening my client. I'm not threatening. I'm promising. Amber moved closer. The bailiff started forward, but she was fast. She crossed the space between us in 3 steps. You greedy old woman, she hissed, and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed in the quiet courtroom. My cheek burned. I tasted blood where my teeth cut the inside of my mouth. You're the shame of this family, Amber screamed and pushed me. I stumbled backward, caught myself on the table. All you care about is money. You don't care about James or Grace or anyone but yourself. The bailiff grabbed her, pulled her back. She fought him, still screaming. She's destroying us. Don't you see that? She's destroying everything. James sat frozen in his chair. Didn't move, didn't speak. Just sat there with his head down while his wife attacked his mother. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, the sound like a gunshot. Bailiff, remove Mrs. Mitchell from my courtroom. She's being charged with contempt and assault. No, Amber shrieked as the bailiff dragged her toward the door. You don't understand. She's the one. She's the one who... The door closed, cutting off her voice. The courtroom was silent except for my ragged breathing. Sarah had her hand on my shoulder. The prosecutor looked stunned. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice tired. Do you have anything to say? James finally looked up. His face was pale, eyes red. He looked at me for the first time since we'd entered the courtroom. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. That's it? The judge's voice was sharp. Your wife just assaulted your mother in open court and that's all you have to say? James's voice broke. I didn't know how to stop it. I tried at first, but He stopped. She what? James closed his eyes. She said if I told the truth, she'd take Grace and disappear. She said I'd never see my daughter again. She said she'd tell everyone I abused them, that I was dangerous. I was scared. I am scared. The admission hung in the air. So you let her steal from your mother instead, Judge Morrison said flatly. Yes. James's voice was barely audible. Yes, I did. And I'll never forgive myself. Sarah squeezed my shoulder, leaned down to whisper. This is it. This is your moment. What do you want? I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I looked at my son, at this man who used to be a little boy who brought me dandelions and called me the best mom in the world, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and promised we'd be okay. Your Honor, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I want full restitution. Every penny. $127,000 plus interest and legal fees. Judge Morrison nodded, making notes. And, I continued, looking directly at James, I want custody of Grace. James's head snapped up. Mom, no, please. Temporary custody, Sarah clarified. Pending investigation of the home environment and the defendant's fitness as parents. You can't do this, James said, standing. She's my daughter. She's your daughter who you used as a threat to keep me quiet, I said. Who you kept from seeing me because your wife decided it. Who's been living in a house built on lies and fraud. I took a breath. I won't let her stay in that anymore. Judge Morrison looked between us. Mr. Breslin, I assume you want to object. Breslin stood, but he looked defeated. Your Honor, my client requests time to consult with his wife before... Your client's wife is currently being processed for assault and contempt. I don't think her opinion is particularly relevant right now. The judge turned to James. Mr. Mitchell, do you contest the custody petition? James looked at me with such devastation in his eyes I almost broke. Almost told Sarah to withdraw it. Then I remembered the pawn shop, the wedding ring, the peanut butter sandwiches Grace never came to eat. The 21 months of lies. Mr. Mitchell, the judge prompted. No, James said finally. I don't contest it. My mother is right. Grace deserves better than this. Judge Morrison made more notes. Here's my preliminary ruling. Mrs. Amber Mitchell will remain in custody pending bail hearing. Criminal charges will proceed. Mr. James Mitchell, you're free on your own recognizance, but you'll surrender your passport. Temporary custody of Grace Mitchell is granted to Mrs. Lorraine Mitchell pending full investigation by Child Services. Both defendants are ordered to cease all contact with Mrs. Mitchell except through attorneys. And you're both ordered to preserve all assets pending resolution of the civil case. She looked up at me. Mrs. Mitchell, a social worker will contact you today to arrange Grace's placement. Do you have adequate housing? I have a one-bedroom apartment, Your Honor. That'll work for now. Child Services will help arrange more permanent accommodations if needed. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Mr. Mitchell, Breslin, my office now. Sarah gathered her papers. You did it, she said quietly. You actually did it. I looked across the courtroom at James. He was crying silently, shoulders shaking. Our lawyer was talking to him, but he wasn't listening. He was just staring at me with those broken eyes. Yeah, I said. I did. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, empty, like I'd won the battle but lost something I could never get back. My son. I'd lost my son. The bailiff approached. Mrs. Mitchell, there's a social worker here to speak with you about Grace. I followed him out of the courtroom, leaving James behind. In the hallway, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a folder introduced herself as Sharon Kim from Child Services. Grace is at school right now. We'll pick her up together at 3 and I'll help you explain what's happening. Do you have clothes for her, necessities? I'll get them. Good. Sharon made notes. We'll also need to do a home visit. but that can wait until tomorrow. Right now, the priority is getting Grace somewhere safe and stable. Safe and stable. That's what I was now. Not her grandmother who baked cookies and told stories. The safe place. The stable place. The place she'd end up because her parents had destroyed everything. At 3 o'clock, Sharon and I waited outside Grace's middle school. Kids poured out, loud and laughing. Then I saw her, walking slowly, backpack dragging. She looked up and saw me, and her whole face transformed. "Grandma!" She ran, threw her arms around me. "I missed you so much." I held her tight, breathing in her shampoo smell. "I missed you too, sweetie." Sharon stepped forward. "Grace, I'm Sharon. I work with the court. We need to talk about some changes." Grace's things arrived in garbage bags. That's how James brought them. 3 black hefty bags stuffed with clothes and books and stuffed animals, delivered to my apartment on a rainy Saturday morning 4 days after the hearing. He stood in my doorway holding the bags, looking like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were hollow, face unshaven, the same shirt he'd worn in court wrinkled and stained. "Can I come in?" he asked. Sharon Kim, who'd insisted on being present for any contact, nodded from behind me. 15 minutes. I'll be right here." James carried the bags to my tiny living room, set them down gently like they might break. Grace was at the kitchen table doing homework, and she looked up when she heard his voice. "Dad? Hey, Bug." His voice cracked. "I brought your stuff." She ran to him. He dropped to his knees and held her, this big man clutching his daughter like she was the only thing keeping him alive. Maybe she was. "Why can't I come home?" Grace asked into his shoulder. "Because home isn't safe right now, baby. But Grandma's going to take good care of you." "Is Mom okay?" James's eyes met mine over Grace's head. The pain in them was bottomless. "Mom's going to be away for a while. She made some mistakes and she has to fix them. Not we made mistakes. She made mistakes." Even now, he couldn't fully own what he'd done. But maybe that would come. Maybe. Sharon cleared her throat. "Mr. Mitchell, 5 more minutes." James pulled back, held Grace's face in his hands. "I love you. I love you more than anything. And I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make everything right. Promise?" "I promise." After he left, Grace cried for an hour. I held her on my second-hand couch while she sobbed, her tears soaking through my shirt. There was nothing I could say that would make it better. Her family had exploded. Her world had shattered. All I could do was hold her and let her grieve. That night, she slept in my bed while I took the couch. The apartment was too small for both of us, but Child Services had promised help finding a 2-bedroom. There were programs, they said, assistance for kinship caregivers. It would take time, but we'd manage. We always managed. The restitution hearing happened 2 weeks later. Amber appeared via video from the county jail, her perfect hair now stringy and roots showing. The contempt and assault charges had kept her locked up. Bail set at $50,000 that apparently neither she nor James could pay. Watching her on that screen, looking diminished and powerless, I should have felt satisfaction, victory. Instead, I just felt tired. Judge Morrison ordered them to liquidate assets. The house would be sold, proceeds split with $127,000 plus $18,000 in interest and legal fees going to me. Amber's offshore accounts would be seized, the money returned. James would pay an additional $500 monthly until the full amount was recovered. "Do you understand these terms?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," James said quietly. He'd gotten a public defender, couldn't afford Breslin anymore. On the screen, Amber's face was stone. "This is theft. You're letting her steal from us." "No, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm making you return what you stole from her. There's a difference." Judge Morrison closed the file. Court adjourned. The house sold fast, price to move. James had nowhere to go, so he moved into his car for 2 weeks until he found a room in a shared house in Gresham. He got a job at an urgent care clinic, lower pay than the hospital but steady work. He called every Sunday to talk to Grace. Sharon supervised at first, then eventually I took over. I'd hand Grace the phone and walk away, give them privacy. Their conversations were quiet, broken by long silences. Grace always cried after. 6 weeks after the hearing, James asked if he could take Grace to dinner. Sharon had cleared him for unsupervised visits by then, said he was cooperating fully with counseling requirements. I said yes. What else could I say? He picked her up at 6, returned her at 8:30. Grace hugged him goodbye for a long time in the doorway, and I saw him wipe his eyes as he walked back to his car, a beat-up Honda that replaced the Lexus he'd had to sell. He said he's sorry, Grace told me as we got ready for bed. He said he was weak and stupid, and he let Mom control everything. What did you say? I said I forgive him. She looked at me with those serious eyes. Do you forgive him, Grandma? I thought about that. About the $127,000. About the lies. About 21 months of eating rice and beans while they vacationed. About my wedding ring in a pawn shop. I don't know yet, sweetie, but I'm trying. The restitution money came in pieces. First, $89,000 from Amber's seized accounts. Then, $58,000 from the house sale. The rest would come monthly from James's paychecks, garnished automatically. With the first payment, I moved us to a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood. With the second, I bought furniture that wasn't from Goodwill. With the third, I started a college fund for Grace. I didn't buy anything expensive or unnecessary. The money felt heavy, tainted, like it came with a cost that couldn't be calculated in dollars. Amber pleaded guilty eventually. Her lawyer worked out a deal, 18 months in minimum security in exchange for full restitution and cooperation. She'd be out in 12 months with good behavior. Will she try to get Grace back? I asked Sarah. She can try, but given the circumstances, I doubt she'll succeed. Sarah closed the file. You've been granted permanent custody. That's not easy to overturn. 3 months after the hearing, James showed up at our apartment with a box. What's this? I asked from the doorway. Photos of Dad. I thought Grace should have them. He held out the box. And this. He pulled something from his pocket. My wedding ring. I found out which pawn shop. I bought it back. He pressed it into my hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for all of it. I looked at the ring in my palm, the small diamond catching the light. Why now? Because I finally understand what I took from you. Not just money. Your security, your dignity, your marriage to Dad. His voice broke. I let her convince me you were the problem, that you were controlling and manipulative, and that we needed to protect ourselves from you. And I believed her because it was easier than admitting I'd married someone who was using us both. Were you using me too, James? Or were you really just afraid? He closed his eyes. Both. I was afraid of her, but I also wanted the life she promised. The nice house, the cars, the vacations. I wanted to believe we deserved it all. He opened his eyes, red-rimmed and wet. I sacrificed you to keep that life, and I'll never forgive myself. I slipped the ring back on my finger. It fit perfectly, the weight familiar after all those months. Thank you for this. It's not enough. No, it's not. We stood there in the doorway, mother and son, the distance between us vast despite being only 3 feet apart. Can I see Grace? He asked. She's at a friend's house. She'll be back at 6. Okay. He turned to leave, then stopped. Mom? Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me? I thought about Harold, about what he would say. He'd always been better at forgiveness than me, quicker to see the good in people. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again in a year. He nodded and left. That evening, Grace came home full of stories about her friend's new puppy. We made spaghetti together. Her job to stir the sauce while I boiled water. Normal things. Easy things. Dad came by, I told her as we ate. Did you fight? No, we talked. He brought back my wedding ring. Grace looked at my hand, at the ring that was back where it belonged. Does that mean things are better? It means things are different. I reached across the table, took her hand. Sometimes different is all we get. A year passed, then another. Grace grew taller, started high school, made honor roll. James got promoted at the clinic, moved into his own apartment. He took Grace every other weekend, brought her back on time, followed all the rules. Amber was released after 11 months. She moved to California, sent Grace birthday cards that came sporadically. Grace stopped asking about her after a while. James came to Grace's 9th grade graduation. We sat on opposite sides of the auditorium, but afterward, when Grace insisted on a photo with both of us, we stood on either side of her and smiled. It wasn't forgiveness yet. Maybe it never would be. But it was something. That night, Grace asleep in her room, I sat on my balcony looking at the Portland lights. The apartment was nice now, comfortable. Grace's college fund had grown. My retirement account was rebuilding slowly. I could have lost everything. My home, my granddaughter, my will to keep going. Instead, I'd fought back, and I'd won. Not completely, not perfectly. James and I would never be what we were. That innocent trust, that assumption of love and loyalty, was gone forever. But we had something new, something harder and more honest, built on consequences instead of denial, on boundaries instead of endless accommodation. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Thank you for everything you do for Grace. I know I don't say it enough. I love you, Mom." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I typed back, "I love you too, but I'm still not giving you money." He sent back a laughing emoji. "Wouldn't ask, promise." Maybe that was progress. Maybe that was all we'd ever get. I thought about Mrs. Patel next door, who'd told me forgiveness was the answer. Maybe she was right for her situation. But this was mine, and I'd chosen differently. I'd chosen to fight, to demand respect, to refuse to be erased. And yeah, it cost me. Cost me my relationship with my son, at least the version of it I'd had before. Cost me the dream of a big, happy family gathering around a holiday table. But I'd kept my dignity. I'd kept Grace. I'd kept myself. Inside, I heard Grace moving around, getting a glass of water. "Grandma? You coming to bed?" "In a minute, sweetie." I looked at my wedding ring, at Harold's photo on my phone lock screen. "I did it, honey," I whispered. I stood up for myself. Finally, the Portland night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Tomorrow, Grace had a soccer game. Next week, parent-teacher conferences. Next month, Grace's 15th birthday. Life continued. Different now, smaller in some ways, richer in others. I'd never get back the years I lost, the money I wasted, the naive trust I'd had in my son. But I'd gained something else, something harder to measure but just as real. I'd gained myself back, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth all of it.